What the Beep Do You Know About Learning English is a podcast for intermediate to advanced learners of English, and some teachers might find it interesting too. The podcast aims to provide different perspectives on teaching and learning English, and at the same time develop our listeners' English skills. In this episode, Amy and Damien look at one of our previous guests' English language learning tip, and pair it up with a review of an online tool that'll help you improve your English. Today, we revisit Vicki's tips for learning English and review 3 collocation tools. If you want to find out the connection between dead bodies and a body of words, then keep listening. Okay, let's start writing. Hi, I'm Damien, the sledgehammer that smashes down language barriers, and this is Amy.
Hello.
Hi, Amy. What do you do?
What do I do? Well, I guess if I could use a squash metaphor, I smash balls against walls.
That sounds a bit dangerous, especially for men.
You might need to edit that out. Sorry, I just played a squash game this morning, so I'm still a bit pumped up.
Well, that's all right. So this episode is our Smashing Sledgehammers format, where we look at our teachers' English language learning tips from previous episodes, and then we look at some online tools that might help you improve your English. So today we're going all the way back to Vicki, and this is what she had to say about learning English.
We've got corpus to guide us a lot of the time. So we can turn to corpora for, well, it's made a big difference in the dictionaries we use. And but also we can go and sort of research topics in terms of word frequency in ways we couldn't do before. I mean, that was always my dream when I was teaching business English all the time, to be able to research that vocabulary that was most useful for that field that the student was working in.
I love the corpus at the moment. There seems to be so many, I suppose, more like user-friendly sort of tools coming out where you can, actually guide students and get them using it as well, which is exciting.
Yes. Yeah. It's a really handy thing for a teacher, that. And in a way, the internet is one big corpus as well, because you can just go to Google, type in, see what the next word is in the autocomplete, or on your phone, you can see what the next word is on the autocomplete, and you're getting collocation advice.
So Vicki made a good point about collocations and how the internet now is like your corpus, and we'll talk about corpus or corpora a little bit later. But first, let's go deep with collocations or word buddies or word friends, because I think words get by with a little help from their friends. Can you sing that for me?
I could sing it, but I don't think the audience would appreciate the sound of my singing, and they may stop listening. So, but I do appreciate the Beatles. I do appreciate the Beatles reference. Very good.
All right, we'll skip the singing. But before we talk about the tools, I think we need to make sure our listeners, understand what exactly collocations are and why they're important as a learner of English. So, yes. Amy, what are collocations?
Well, collocations are words that we put together. They can be words that we commonly put together to make phrases, sometimes even compound nouns, I suppose.
Yeah, they're words that commonly go together. And another way to look at it, I suppose, if we just break apart, we do a bit of like morphology and break apart collocations into its 3 parts. And we have the prefix, which is col, which sort of means, together or with, while the main part of the word is location. So as a whole, it sort of means words that are together, or as I wanted you to sing before, words like to be friends or, like to hang out. So no word is an island, But unfortunately, I suppose students often treat words like islands when they need to be thinking of, like, I don't know, what's another metaphor, communities or families or, words
you
hanging out.
literally just stole that out of my brain. Yes, communities would be a really good way to think of words. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, and this is what you said before, collocations tell us which words, can come before or after a word, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be more than just 2 words, it can be like 3 or 4, maybe even 5. So, Amy, show me the money, or what are some verbs that go with money? Can you give me a few collocations for money?
Well, show.
Yeah,
but I feel like you need the object with me. Pay money, spend money, make money, earn money, waste money, lose money. Those last 2 are just things you don't want to do. Invest money.
Yeah, and that's heaps. So you, as an expert speaker of English, can, automatically call up all these words that are connected or are collocations with money. So I think knowing collocations will help you become more fluent in English, because the human brain is basically wired for chunks or collocations, and the more collocations you know, the faster you can speak, listen, read and write in English. And just recently I'm reading a book like about peak performance or how to get the best in different fields, like playing a violin, and they talk about learning languages as well. And they refer to one experiment which I think sort of connects into collocations. And it's if you test someone's memory with like a random selection of words, screw it, I'll just get you to do the experiment, yeah? Rather than me try to explain it. And I think it'll be more vivid for our listeners. So you're going to be the lab rat.
All right, good.
I'm going to tell you a collection of words.
Okay.
And you need to try and remember them in order, as many as possible. Don't write anything down, yeah? Okay.
All right.
Don't cheat.
You can't see me though, so you don't know.
No, I can hear. We can hear.
Furious scratching on a paper with a pen. Yes, okay. All right.
So I just say them and you try to remember them in order, and yeah, that's the deal. Okay. I'll start now.
Yep.
Was, smelled, front, that, his, the, peanuts, he, good, hunger, eating, belly, eating, woman, of, so, in, could, that, him, contain. Okay. So how many words can you remember? Go, tell me. In order.
Was, smelt, woman, peanuts,
that's
hunger,
it. You got 2.
contain.
So you got 2. And, yeah, I mean, most people get similar score. I think the average was about 6. But, yeah, most people couldn't really recall a lot of those words. Okay, now I'm going to say the same words again, but in, like, comprehensible sentence, and you need to try and remember it as much as possible or retell the sentence correctly, okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So are you ready for part 2?
Oh, I think so.
All right. The woman in front of him was eating peanuts that smelled so good that he could barely contain his hunger. All right, hit me with it.
The woman in front of him was eating peanuts that smelt so good that he could barely contain his hunger.
Yes, 100%. You redeemed yourself. You're in the top 100.
Yeah.
So most people remember most of the sentence or all of it. And I suppose, what do you think's happening there? Why do you think you can remember the second one more than the first?
Well, I would put that down to me knowing, like, what the order of a sentence should basically be. Because before it's nonsensical because it's just a whole bunch of words, and I think probably, there's no flow there for me.
And that's what the scientists think, that people can make sense of the words, I suppose, they call them pre-existing mental representations. So you have in your mind, I suppose, the order of a sentence or the grammar or what words go with each other. So I think that's where I think collocations are maybe part of these representations in an expert speaker of English.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if this is relevant to what you were also saying just then, but I could get a picture of the scene. Like I could see the man waiting behind the woman with the peanuts, and feeling like, oh God, I really need food because I'm hungry. So yeah, that's what was going on in my mind as well. So I got like a mental image of the scene, and then it sort of, I could then kind of describe it back, if that makes any sense. Does that help?
Yeah, I think it's like storytelling and things like that. Yeah, like with memory and stuff. Stories and things hook into your memory, but also can be cultural thing, like depending on what culture it is. I don't know. People eating peanuts might be more of a Western culture. So it also comes down to culture and stuff like that. There's probably lots of factors, but also, if you look at the sentence, there's also, like, I suppose collocations come in like in front of. So instead of just remembering the word front, if you have a group, you've got a group of three, or smelled so good, which I imagine would be a very strong collocation, or could barely control, that's like another 3-word collocation. So I think if you learn individual words without collocations, you'll sort of be like the first example in that experiment. You just got all these sort of random words you have to bring out of your mind and put together. While if you have, if you're strong in collocations, you'll be more like the second one and you'll become fluent in English. But if you still don't believe me, I have one more test to show our listeners. Do it. So exciting. This is Lab Rat episode 2. And in this test, I'm hopefully going to show like the power of collocations with a little collocation test from the book Keywords to Fluency. So I'll say the sentence and then you give me, the word that you think follows that, or the collocation, okay?
All right.
So number 1, but leave a little bit of a gap so our listeners can have a go at it as well, okay?
The gap may be quite natural.
Well, you can say now, you weren't thinking about it, but it's a good, good way to get out of it. So number 1, I need to work harder at my English. I make too many silly what?
Mistakes.
Yes, that's right. So that's a very strong collocation, silly mistakes. And number 2, look, we've got plenty of time. I'd like to see what the countryside round here is like. Let's take the scenic beep home. What do you think?
Well, depending on pronunciation where you are in the world, you could say route or route.
Yes. And number 3, if your television breaks down in the first 3 months, we promise to replace it free of what?
Charge.
Yes, you're on a roll. Number 4, not only did she win the marathon, she also set a new world what?
Record.
Yes, and you might be setting a new world record for getting collocations correct here today. Number 5, there's been a coup and the president and his family have fled the... What do you think?
Country.
Bingo. And we'll do one more. On the way to Athens last week, we flew through an electric storm. The plane was struck by... And what do you think?
Lightning.
Lightning, that's right. So you got 100% in that test. So that's, I think, a clear demonstration. Like, as an expert speaker of English or someone who's spoken it since they were born, you can automatically fill in these gaps. And just think, if you're listening to something, you're already it helps you be a better listener because you're pre-filling, what your speaker is going to say. So it's I suppose these collocations feed into everything. Whether you're reading, you'll read more fluently because you can skip along without just going word by word. You'll listen better because you're predicting what's happening, what's coming, and also your writing and speaking will be more natural. So I think that's why collocations, well, that's what collocations are and why I think they're important for students if you want to become a fluent speaker in a second language. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So often I see students, there's so much about vocabulary you can talk about, but so often I see students just randomly writing down words on a page and then they think that's their way of gathering vocabulary. And so, they really have to be pushed or prompted to do the collocation work, like to set up that habit, because a lot of them will not unless you prompt them. So it's really, really valuable work to do.
Yeah, and even for me, I think reflecting on studying Thai, I still often write down single words, even though I know I shouldn't. But I do often then go back and try to expand on it or find them, in context with collocations. Just a little bit harder, I think, with English. There's all these tools you can do. With Thai, it's a bit limited with how you find these things. You still can. It just takes a lot more effort.
Okay.
But and that's what we're moving on to now. So we're moving on to the tools in English that can help you find collocations. In the past, it was a lot trickier, especially, pre-internet. But thank God for the internet. You can now use special godlike powers of the Oxford and Cambridge dictionary writers to improve your language, which is through an English language corpus. And with a corpus, I said we'd explain this early on, I suppose a corpse is like a body or a dead body, yeah? Well, that's an oxymoron,
that's
yeah?
Right.
While a corpus is a body of words, yeah? So just think of this big body of words, yeah? And it's basically a massive collection of English words that is searchable. And these types of tools make it easy to find collocations. And that's what Vicki mentioned as well, like just simply doing a Google search nowadays can give you a quick check on what kind of words go around certain vocabulary. Like if we put, money in, I'm sure we'd come up with some of the words that you threw out before. So let us move on. In this episode, we're going to look at 3 corpus, corpora. What did you call it? Corpi?
Well, it is actually, I did check it. So it's corpora or it's corpuses.
Yeah. Oh, corpuses.
You can say both, apparently. You can say corpus. Don't say corpses, though. Say corpuses or corpora. Corpora, I think, sounds much kind of cooler, I think. Corpora. I don't know.
Okay. We're going to look at
cooler.
3 corpora that could help you improve your English. So we did a bit of a test, both of us. We put through 2 words and just checked out like what these tools are capable of and which one I think is the best for you, the listener. The words we used, I used favourite and select. So favourite is a high frequency word in the general word list, while select is from like the academic word list. So with the tools, we looked at 3 tools: Netspeak, JustTheWord, and the IWeb Corpus. So what we'll do, Amy, today is we'll just go through each tool and sort of compare them in each of the 3 categories, and at the end we'll give our sledgehammers as to which one we think is the best tool and see if we're in agreement or not.
Perfect.
Or you might want to be smashing some more balls, I don't know, like from your squash experience. So
yes, I do mean that as a sports metaphor, just so you know, everybody.
Metaphor. Good.
It's all about sports. I'm not a violent person, but when it comes to a racket hitting a ball against the wall, I'm in.
All right. We'll
the
leave
squash
it in
court.
the sports realm. Pedagogy. So the first category is pedagogy, and pedagogy is sort of looking at, like their teaching methodology, or is it based on good research or ideas the three tools. So the first tool is Netspeak, and it's I think it had a little phrase. It's called "one word leads to another." I think was its little catchphrase.
That is the catchphrase.
And they use, I think, the internet as their corpus. It's not like a specialized corpus, which I think can be good or bad because it's not that controlled. It sort of just trawls, and I don't know what sort of range of websites it's trawling or looking through. So you get a wide variety of language, but what I noticed is that it sort of picks up like bad language from the internet. Like it seemed to pick up, like titles of articles or titles of things.
Yeah,
or
I noticed
very
that as well. Yeah,
internet-based language. So that sort of, I think, lets it down. For me, did you notice anything else about that one or not?
Yeah, I did. Often it would be titles of things, and it wasn't. I mean, it had a combination of titles and general use, but when I first was playing around with it, I was just getting a whole bunch of titles of books and journals and things, and I thought, oh, okay, that isn't really what I would be wanting it for or using it for. No.
Yeah, so it's definitely got a few flaws, which we'll look at in some of the other categories and at the end. With JustTheWord, for me, this one had a lot stronger foundation, and with Netspeak, you don't really know where it's getting its words or sentences from. With JustTheWord, it's taking it from, I think, Coca, is it, or the British corpus? I can't remember the name, but it's based on a proper corpus, so it's giving quality, sentences or data about words. So I think this one's more of the real deal than, say, the Netspeak one in regards to pedagogy. It's the British. Sorry, I've got it here. BNC, the British National Corpus, is what it's based on. And what it also, I suppose, just how it breaks it up is pretty good. So it breaks up the word types into groups, like prepositions or nouns, or a verb followed by a noun and stuff like that. And you also have access to concordance lines, which are the, do you know what concordance lines are?
I've heard that, but I'm not sure if I understand what it actually means. Can you clarify that a bit more?
Yeah, it's just like puts lots of example sentences above each other.
Oh,
so
right.
It'll
Okay.
display like 20. So in JustTheWord, if you clicked on the collocation, it'll then flip to the concordance lines where it got its data from. So you can sort of scan down and see all the patterns very quickly. You can sort of see what words are coming all around it and get a lot better feel for it. And that's where it'd be useful for writing, which we'll talk about later. Okay, so let's move to the third tool, the IWeb Corpus. What did you think about that, Amy?
To be honest, of all three, I thought this one was much better. I thought this was the best one of the three.
And why? What did you like about it?
Look, a lot of things. I mean, I think it was more user-friendly than the other two. I liked the way it breaks up. I'm always trying to encourage my students whenever I can to try and make I don't know, particularly when they're preparing for an IELTS test, to try and do like a vocabulary, like a scrapbook in a sense. And what I liked about this was this is kind of how I'd want them to do the scrapbook with vocabulary. Obviously not with just the one word, but with many words. You've got the word, you've got the definition, you've got topics that it relates to, words obviously that it collocates with because it's a corpus, so it has to have that. Word clusters, it has synonyms, the concordance lines. And what I also really like is the fact that you can, it gets away a little bit from collocations here, but you can hear in video clips how to pronounce the word as well, and hearing people using it in sentences. So I just thought it just gave me a lot more when I was using it than the other two did.
Yeah, definitely. It's sort of like a big mega omni-uber sort of corpus. It seems to cover a whole lot. And as you said, like that scrapbook analogy is quite good. It's sort of like it has all those different parts of knowing a word, which you often try to get your students to, note down about new vocabulary. So that was cool with that format. And even, the speaking stuff, it is still collocations because they're using those collocations in spoken language. And that's another aspect, I think, of getting to know a collocation is how is it spoken in quick speech, or how do they use it, or how do they stress it, those collocations, which is good. User experience. So moving on to user experience, so we'll move back to Netspeak now. Is the user experience is talking about, how easy is it to use, to search, to find words, and, So with Netspeak, I think it's pretty user friendly. There's not much to it, and it's got a little help button. What I do like about Netspeak is that you can be quite specific about, like putting the question mark between two words, or put two question marks and look for collocations in between. So I quite liked Netspeak's, search function or search queries in that regard, even though the quality of what you got back wasn't as good. So what did you think about JustTheWord? Did you have any problems using that?
No, I found it fine. I did struggle a little bit though with the alternatives buttons. I found them a little bit strange to navigate.
Yeah, those ones, I don't actually know if they work or I'm doing it wrong.
Yeah, I don't think they do, because I kept trying to put in the word. I'm doing it now actually as we speak.
Yeah.
Just to review. Well, actually the web server's down anyway, so it's not working. But yeah, it had, so obviously it's got the combinations button, which was the first thing that we would go to, but now the web is down at this very moment. It wasn't the other day though. But then the alternatives, offers a lot of promise, because then it suggests things from the thesaurus. But then, it didn't really seem to do what it says it's going to do.
Yeah, with the alternative buttons, I think I just avoid it. So if I'm advising students to use it, I just use the combination one. Maybe there is some way to use it, but I couldn't find it. I looked in the sort of notes on the person who designed it, and I couldn't really see how to use the alternates button. But other than that, I suppose the basic thing, you put the word in and it found the collocations, like the basic button worked easily enough.
And I do like, what I like about JustTheWord and also IWeb Corpus is the use of color coding to break things up as well. Like I think that's a good thing to do, to show different word forms and parts of speech. Although the one criticism I will make about IWeb Corpus was in the Concordance Lines, what it needed, maybe I missed this, you could probably direct me differently, is it probably needed to have a clearer key of the parts of speech or the word forms. So it's color coded, but then it didn't, I don't know. To us, it might be quite obvious that, okay, this word, which is in, fluoro green, is an adjective, but that may not be obvious to a student using it. So they probably needed a key in that particular one.
Yeah, I don't know if there is I imagine there would be a key.
I don't think there is. Yeah, I don't know where it is though. So that
probably just assuming people know it, but it would be useful for students.
Which if we look from their point of view, I don't think it would be immediately obvious to them at first. So that's where I think it loses a mark or two in user friendliness.
Yeah. Also, just with the searches, I don't know, with JustTheWord, it just seemed like you could only put in one word and then it would find. Well, as I said with Netspeak before, you could do more variety with the type of search. And with IWeb Corpus, did you try that with more than one word? I wasn't sure if it had a function where you could, put a gap, leave a gap in and find a word in between two words and stuff like that. I'd probably have to play around.
I didn't try it, to be honest. I didn't try it, to be honest. I was just looking for the one word to see what it would come up with. But But again, perhaps that is an issue that they would need to address if they wanted to improve it for people.
Language learning potential. All right, so let's move down to, I suppose, language learning potential. Like, if you're advising a student to use this tool, do you think it is the real deal? So starting with Netspeak, what do you think about that one for language learning potential?
Well, I have to slightly disagree with you in terms of the codes that were written. Maybe it's just me and the way my brain works, but it took me a little while to try and figure out how to actually use it and to put in the codes. And I couldn't immediately differentiate between what one code and what another one meant, unless, of course, it was like the code that searched for a synonym, perhaps.
Okay, you mean like in Netspeak looking at the...
Yeah, having parentheses or a hashtag or, I mean, I sort of, it took me a little while to kind of figure it out. And I thought, well, I don't know, again, whether this would just confuse students, whether it would be immediately obvious to them what they need to do and then what they're looking at. So I don't know. I think this one is problematic in a lot of ways.
So would you advise a student to use it or not?
As a first choice, no.
Yeah, I think I used to use it, like, I suppose maybe 5-6 years ago when I first came across it. I thought it was quite good, but I just think it's one of those programs that hasn't sort of been, I might be wrong, but I don't think it's been like updated or improved on since it first came out. And it feels to me like the search and the information that it's getting is not that good in terms of accuracy. It might be good for a really quick check, but in a sense, you might as well just be using Google as like what Vicki advised, in that opening segment, because Google does a similar thing. If you're typing in, it'll bring up certain collocations and stuff to go with it. So for me, it's probably better just to do, if you're familiar with your search engine, you just use that rather than Netspeak as your first port of call, I suppose. Or the first place you go to. And with JustTheWord, for me, I suppose you can learn a lot for it, and particularly I think with writing, because it's on that British National Corpus, and I think that's a lot of that is like a written corpus. It like allows you, I think, if you're looking, you want to find out certain what preposition follows a word when you're writing, and you can go in and then find it in those groups or categories. So I think it's useful for that. So with this one, I think it's good for students in particular, ones who want to develop their writing further with collocations.
Yeah, I would agree with that, definitely.
And the final one, IWeb Corpus, what about that for learning potential?
As I said before, I think this is the strongest model. I think it's the best of the three. And what I also liked about it was, I can't remember which button I pushed. I'll probably have to go back and play around with it again. Yeah. But there was a function where you could show word family as well. And I thought that's really good, because I quite often teach word families and get students practicing using the different forms of the word in different sentences. So I just think it's a lot more comprehensive. It just gives them a lot, I think, from an interesting point of view. I quite like the fact that you can go to external websites where people have handpicked, short video clips, that people can view and listen to the words being used in sentence. I just think it offers the student a lot of things that they can do.
Yeah, definitely. I think this one was a newer one I came across, I don't know, through a professional learning network, and I was just surprised by how much information it sort of brought together under one search. It was sort of like the corpus people were maybe dreaming of in the past is now, the future is now, that sort of stuff. The only thing is, I think you do. Did you do many searches? I think you do have to register at some point for it if you do a certain amount of searches in a day, but I can't remember how many you have to do. But it's not a big issue.
So is it a subscriber-based corpus?
No, you didn't need to pay for it, but you just need to register and create an account.
Okay.
After you do maybe 5 searches. I don't know how many in a day, but I don't think that's too much of a turn-off.
Okay.
So, yeah, if we go back and round it up, so when we do our sledgehammers, you know, out of 5, with 5 being spectacularly good and 1 being pretty terrible, like a corpse rather than a corpus. So which one do you think? Well, no, let's go with, we'll go through it. Netspeak, how many hammers, how many sledgehammers are you going to give that?
Sorry, but in this case, I'm going to have to give it about a 1.
Yeah, same. I think I'd sit between 1.5.
Yeah, 1.5 would be my maximum, I think.
And I'll probably delete it off my favourites. I think it's going to the bin. I've had it up there for a long time, but after sitting down and comparing it to other ones available now and how it hasn't really developed, I think I would say don't use it anymore and use your search engine will do a comparable sort of job. And moving on to Just the Word. I'll start with this one. So for me, I think this has still got value, and particularly, as I said before, with a writing sense, and I do like how it organises them into those different groups. Oh, and I did forget, it had a very clear frequency bar, so you could actually see the frequency of the collocations. So, because sometimes it can be quite, I think, daunting or scary when a student goes in and sees how many words are connected to a word and how you're going to remember all of them. This one gave very clear frequency. So if I had a long green bar, you could see, oh, okay, this one's used all the time. So in that sense, I think it's really good for writing. Can also for speaking, but in particular writing, because you can then find those high frequency collocations and sound a lot more natural in your writing.
And that's where the issue often lies, is that students sometimes are focusing on too many words or prioritizing words that don't have high frequency. And so if they can see that actually this is going to be a word that's going to be quite valuable to you to use quite a lot, then I think that's incredibly helpful.
Yeah. Like there are 2 sides of the same coin. Isn't high frequency, but it comes up a lot. I don't know if you see that a lot in your students.
Well, back in Australia, yes, but not here, no.
Okay. So this one, I like it. So I think I'd still give it like a 4 for me, 4 sledgehammers, because I think it's pretty good. Other than that, the dodgy buttons that don't work or seemingly don't work, I think there's a lot of value in how they set it up.
Yeah, I was a little bit lower. I was a 3.5.
All right. Pretty close. And then the last one, IWeb Corpus. You can lead this one.
Yeah, well, as I said, I thought this one was head and shoulders above the other 2, just by how comprehensive it is, how much it offers. So I'm just gonna dive straight in and say it's a 4.5.
Yeah, same here. I was thinking 4.5 for this one. It could probably be refined a little bit in the future with just maybe the interface a bit more.
Yes.
But overall, as we sort of said before, it just sort of brings all those different aspects of getting to know a word together in one place.
It's a bit of a one-stop shop, as you could say. One-stop shop.
Definitely one-stop shop.
It's your department store of Quora, I would say.
Vocabulary. It's got
vocabulary.
Everything
in one place.
You need. So, yeah, I think it's pretty good, this one. And I think students, if they find a word, I think a really great next step, and as you said, if they keep a scrapbook or something where they sort of build their knowledge about that word and try to look at some different things. Like I said, with Thai, I always love looking at example sentences or sort of like concordance lines, I suppose, and just getting a feel for that word and seeing how it interacts with, the word friends around it. And it really helps me develop my knowledge of that word and how it sits, as a collocation. you do. So this sort of tool I would love to have in Thai because it would just put it all in one place and takes out all that sort of thing of having to go to all different sites. It just puts it all in the one place. So
for sure.
4.5, yeah, smashing it out. So if you're listening, which you hopefully are, then head over to IWeb Corpus. Also on English Riot, I'll put up the links to these tools so you can get a better understanding of them yourself. So that's it. That's like the end of the episode. I think if I ever design my own corpus, I would probably call it Bride or Corpus Bride, I was thinking. Do you have any ideas for your own specialised corpus?
I really hadn't thought about it, but I'll let you know. But I do like Bride's corpus.
But anyway, thank you for coming today. And I learnt a lot, I think, by going through this process and just working out, which of these tools are best. I know in the classroom which one I'll be using more and stuff like that and recommending to my students. And hopefully you had a similar experience. And see you next time.
Bye-bye, everybody.
I hope you enjoyed our 9th episode on Collocations. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and leave a comment through the Anchor app or at English Riot. We reply to everyone. Next episode, we'll be speaking with one of my favourite teaching English YouTubers, Christian Saunders of Kangaroo English. See you next time.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.